Are we alone? We ask that question on this edition of Beyond 2000, when we investigate the existence of UFOs and extraterrestrials. Atop in Washington State, pilot Kenneth Arnold spotted a strange object he later described as looking like a flying saucer. It was the beginning of the UFO phenomenon. But 40 years on and many thousands of reported sightings later, are we any closer to answering this mystery?
I've got overwhelming evidence, I'm convinced, that we're dealing with the biggest story of the millennium, that some UFOs are intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft, that we're dealing with a kind of cosmic Watergate that is some small groups and governments of a number of countries have known since '47 when one crashed, was picked up with bodies and so forth. And I'm also convinced that none of the arguments made by a small group of very vocal, noisy negativists stand up under careful scrutiny.
Because this is such a passionate issue, because it's such an important issue, we must require the most rigorous standards of evidence. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. And unfortunately, the evidence is absolutely shoddy.
In this edition of Beyond 2000, we'll examine the UFO debate. And in coming shows, we'll look at the scientific push into a new realm, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It's no longer the stuff of science fiction. These days, it's very serious and expensive investigation. Millions of dollars and the careers of some famous researchers are at stake in answering the eternal question, are we alone? The Knowles family had been driving all night. They were crossing Australia's Nullarbor Plain, and in the pre-dawn glow, something very frightening happened. Family members say a bright light in the shape of an egg cup flared above them. The car began to shake violently, and for a moment, even seemed to become airborne.
Felt like my brain was getting sucked out. We thought we were all dead.
Seconds later, there was a loud hum. The car dropped and went into a spin as they blew a tyre. Later, the car was found to have pockmarks on the roof and a spray of ash inside. The media, of course, went to town. Stories of encounters with strange objects have been inflaming public curiosity for years. However, the experts found other explanations. It may have been a mini electrical storm, they said, most likely a meteorite breaking up above them. As for the car,
consistent with poor maintenance of the front brakes, and the last time that they were replaced, they weren't cleaned very well, and ordinary everyday use of a car that picks up a few dents here and there.
The Knowles family experience was far from rare. Since 1947, there have been more than 1 million reportings of UFOs all over the world. And the event was typical for another reason as well.
The Perth family, which maintains it was picked up and shaken by a UFO on the Nullarbor Plains, now says it should never have spoken about that experience. The family was responding to claims that the strange dust in their car was merely from the brakes.
We're going to look like real idiots.
We're going to get called liars and everything. So you report these things and they call you liars. And it really happens to you.
Are you sorry you told the authorities?
Yes, I'm sorry.
As others have discovered, the world is quick to ridicule those that speak up about such unexplained events. But the sheer bulk of sightings has led some scientists to take the matter very seriously. Stanton Friedman is a nuclear physicist who's been researching UFOs for more than 20 years.
If one has a serious scientific interest in finding out about extraterrestrial life, intelligent life especially, then it seems to me one cannot ignore the only large body of evidence we have, the UFO data, the flying saucer data.
Encounters range from witnessing strange lights in the night sky and disc-shaped objects in daylight to marks or saucer nests left on the ground. And more recently, cases of actual abductions where the victims claim they've been used as human guinea pigs for some bizarre experiments.
We have 2,500 physical trace cases from 65 countries, cases where there are physical changes produced in the ground, which you can see after the saucer leaves. 20% of those involve reports of creatures. We have a NASA scientist at that, computerized file of more than 3,500 pilot sightings from 40 countries, 90% involving more than one witness, 50% lasting for more than a minute, hundreds involving electromagnetic effects, radar, etc. We have hundreds of abduction cases. We have loads of multiple witness, radar, visual sightings, guy in the ground, guy in the sky, radar both places, etc. We have an enormous amount of evidence.
Back in the early 50s, the frequency of sightings so disturbed the US Air Force, they started Project Blue Book. It was an attempt to investigate and explain the sightings. But in hindsight, it was little more than a public relations exercise. J. Ellen Hynek, an investigator on Project Blue Book, later revealed, "We'd had the word handed down from the Pentagon, don't get the public excited. Emphasize the things that are solvable and put the kibosh on cases you can't explain." But still later, reports flooded in. Saucer-shaped, cigar-shaped, glowing, flashing, hovering noiselessly in the sky, then taking off at impossible speeds. They interfere with the electrical systems of cars. They're tracked by radar. They leave claw marks in the earth, yet still we have no answer. However, Stanton Friedman believes it's no accident the sightings have become so prolific since the 40s. He maintains aliens only started to become interested in us when we started to have the capacity to come out and bother them.
The big break in technology came World War II. 3 obvious things to any cop on the beat. Atom bomb, clearly. Rockets, the V-2s that the Germans were firing. There were lots of them. It wasn't just one, a lot of them. And radar. The Galactic Federation Intelligence Agency is certain to be concerned about this society at this time because we're going through that transition from primitive to being able to take our brand of friendship, hostility, I think is a fair word, out to bother them.
Again, I would say that the extraordinary evidence that is required here is simply unavailable. These are just stories, and there are all kinds of people, all kinds of reasons why people tell stories. And what we don't have is not one case which is simultaneously so reliably reported that you have to believe it, and so exotic that it has to be a spacecraft from another planet. The vast bulk of them are just misapprehended natural phenomena. People are not used to looking up in the sky, and even policemen and airline pilots and others have made fundamental errors in understanding what they saw.
Around the world, organizations have sprung up devoted to investigating the claims in a more scientific manner. Keep an open mind, they urge, study the data thoroughly, and remain aware of our ignorance. But the UFO enigma remains.